Good morning, Annie. How you doing today?
I'm super done.
That's good to hear. Our guest today is an author, an editor, journalist, and a lot more. Her work has appeared in Time, Rolling Stone, the NPR, just to name a few places. Our guest today is Annie Zaleski. Annie, thank you for joining us today. We're so excited. We're going to be discussing your new book, I Got You, Babe, A Celebration of Cher. Is Cher the most influential artist of the 20th century?
That is a big question, and I could probably make an argument that yes. Among other things, she is kind of a model for how you can have a career and be successful in many different areas. I think everyone knows her for her music career. Hits like "I Got You, Babe" and "Believe," things like that. But she's also an Oscar-winning actress who's been, very, very selective about kind of her acting career and where she wants to act. She's been a TV star. She's been a fashion maven, and she's been sort of a model for the modern celebrity. When you think about how celebrities, have their own businesses on the side, and are really kind of making themselves their name in terms of things that they're passionate about. She's always done a lot of things on the side based on things that she really loves. So yeah, she's massively influential.
Nice. So, what is your favorite Cher moment?
Oh my goodness, there's so many favorite share moments. I have to admit I do love her revenge dress in the 1980s, where she basically, she was tapped to present at the Academy Awards, but she wasn't nominated. She's a little bit salty about that. So she ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to show up wearing this dress that's going to make everyone talk. With like rooster feathers in her hair that were dyed black and very midriff bearing, a very dramatic headline. And sure enough, she totally made it. So that's one of my favorite moments. But honestly, so many of her musical moments are my favorite. She did an album in Muscle Shoals that's kind of obscure. That's just a really lovely collection of songs that just kind of shows off a different side of her. She fronted a rock band named Black Rose, kind of under the radar in the early '80s, and I've always really loved that as well because she's a real her presence kind of as a rock front woman is really dynamic. But I mean, there's so many moments. She's just so endlessly fascinating.
Nice. So, it sounds like she's kind of a Renaissance person, able to be quite diverse.
That's exactly it. And I think that she's a very resilient person as well. So if she's doing something and it's not working out, or she wants to do something else, she has no problem pivoting, and she has no problem putting the work in to be a success. If she is pivoting to something different, or working on a new endeavor, or trying to make something happen, she's very persistent.
What is she currently up to?
So she put out her own memoir last year. And so she has been promoting that. That was a instant bestseller, of course. And so she did a lot of kind of interviews around that. But she's been doing performances here and there too. Charity things. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame last year and performed at that. I keep hearing all of these rumors that she's going to be making, another record and even potentially going on tour again, which seems preposterous. But you can never count out Cher. She is so active and is just so passionate about her music and her art that, if she feels like making a record and going on tour, Cher's going to go on tour. And I love that about her. So, but she's always keeping busy, which is great.
Nice. What I always thought was a good spot for her is when she did the thing out in Vegas.
Absolutely. Has, Vegas has been a second home for her almost concert wise. Back in the late '70s, early '80s, her career, she was trying to kind of rejuvenate it. She was raising kids, and she ended up going to Vegas and doing a lot of residencies there, very early on when going to Vegas really had a negative connotation. But as her career has kind of progressed and Vegas became, kind of a cool place to do shows, she's done that. She put on these amazing shows, just, with costume changes galore and beautiful sets that really kind of show off her career in a really grand way. And so, yeah, I mean, I saw her, geez, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and it was basically like her Vegas show on the road. It was phenomenal. It was just, it was befitting Cher's status as a pop icon.
Nice. So about how many times have you seen her perform?
That's a good question. I think just once, once or twice. Just because in the last 20 years or so, if you didn't really go to Vegas, it was a little bit hard to see her. But oh my goodness, she lived up to every second of it. And I've obviously watched her tour videos and things like that. But she was phenomenal. And I guess the star at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too. I happened to be there in person, and just hearing her sing like with this rock band, with her band was just amazing. She's been at just such a high level of a performer for so long now. It's really admirable.
Nice. You're from up that way, right? In Cleveland?
I am absolutely. I am from just outside of Cleveland.
So, how does this book compare to your previous books, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, Pink, Heathers?
Yeah. So my Gaga is more like straight biography, where I was kind of telling their life stories in kind of a chapter by chapter way. My Taylor Swift book was looking at specifically her songs, so telling stories behind her songs, and so giving kind of insights into that. This book is different. It's first off that it has, it's like mini chapters on various eras of Cher's career. So we definitely cover the music career. We definitely cover songs like Believe. We cover I Got You Babe, but it's a little bit more expansive. We talk about how that she's worked with animal rescues. I talk about some of her business dealings. I talk a little bit about directing. And so it's a little bit more expansive and it's a little bit more a chronological look at all aspects of her life. So it's almost like a biography, kind of, chopped up into kind of little mini chapters with the ability to kind of have fun interludes. One of the coolest things she's done recently is she has a gelato business called Cher Lotto.
Hmm.
And so she has a food truck and things like that. So I have a little chapter on that just because it's so fascinating that, this late in her career, she's like, I love ice cream. I love dessert. Let's do gelato. And so I just love that. So it just shows her, just creativity and just, penchant for following her muse and things that she loves to do.
Nice. What did it mean to you to have Cyndi Lauper write the foreword for your new
Um,
book?
Having Cyndi do the foreword honestly meant everything. And she and Cher are longtime friends. They toured together. And so, I knew that Cyndi would have good insight. But the fact that also Cyndi, just recently got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Cyndi herself is just an artist that is uncompromising and really put together a career on her terms. She was a perfect fit, and I was overjoyed that we were able to get her for this because she was just the perfect person to introduce Cher.
Nice. Any chance she'll be the topic of your next book?
I would love that. Cyndi is one of those artists that I could write about endlessly. So hopefully, it's funny. My next book is actually on TV Knit. I'm working on this right now. It's going to be coming out next year. Also, a look at her life through her music. So I have this like streak going where I'm talking about these very iconic women who have really put together these great careers. So I feel very fortunate to kind of have carved out a book career in that sort of niche.
Nice. So, where on social media, where on the web, where can our listeners find out more about you and your books?
Yeah. So my website is anniezaleski.com, and I think the place where I'm at most recently is, or currently is, Instagram. I'm under Annie Zaleski, author. I post some things on Facebook as well under my name, but those are the best places.
Awesome. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. Our listeners are very excited about your new book, I Got You Babe, a celebration of Cher. And like you said, it's just so cool how you were able to get Cyndi Lauper to write the foreword for that. So that'll be an exciting read, reading both of your all's work. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That was Annie Zaleski. It was a pleasure having her on. I Got You Babe, a celebration of Cher. Looking forward to reading that and yeah, definitely check that out at local bookstores.